Hello, and welcome to Socially Holistic Podcast. Socially Holistic helps coaches and holistic entrepreneurs and women in heart-centered businesses make sense of social media so they can build their own online network and get more clients. As a heart-centered business owner, you do amazing work. Holly's mission in life is to help you help more people. Help us help more women in business with a 5-star review of this podcast. Please leave one today over at iTunes. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more heart-centered businesses will be successful. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Socially Holistic Podcast. This is episode 21. This is your host, Holly Wharton. I'm here today with our special guest, Joe Casey. Joe helps people to work happy. Welcome, Joe.
Hi Holly. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you because I think it's so important that whatever we do, whether it's our business or our job, that we're happy in what we're doing. And I think this is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of people have it the wrong way around. I know I did for a long time, thinking that, well, when we just get the career or the business or the whatever it is that we're wanting, then we'll be happy. And actually, it's the other way around. If you can get happy where you're at, then everything becomes so much easier. Work, life, everything.
Yes, I agree. And it's just all about making that decision to be happy, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay, well, I started off many moons ago in the corporate training world. I used to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big consultancy firms, doing lots of IT rollouts, these kind of huge monolithic projects. And whilst I enjoyed it and I was being really stretched and I learned a lot, there was just something missing for me. There was just something that it just wasn't kind of pushing those buttons for me. And then 13 and a half years ago, I had my son, my amazing son called Cole. And it kind of gave me that opportunity to take a step back, have a bit of a break while I was on maternity leave. And I thought, no, I don't want to go back to that world. It was lots of time on the road. There was lots of travelling. How am I going to be able to combine it? So I freelanced for a little while. And while I was doing that, I got a call to go in and do an assessment for a local council in Wales, which is, I'm in the UK in the north of England, so it wasn't too far away from me. Piece of work was going around and speaking to people who had been on the receiving end of lots of this council's projects, and one of them was an enforced parenting course, which, for those of you who don't know, this is where parents are compelled, they're forced to attend a parenting course, otherwise their children are at risk of being taken off them and taken into care. So, it's what you would think is pretty heavy duty and pretty serious. And I have to say, I wasn't really looking forward to this day. I was thinking, oh gosh, what are these people going to be saying? And when I got there, it was the most amazing experience ever. I can still remember it so vividly, and it must be 12 years on now. All of the women there had gone from having their children at risk to now being present, confident, supported parents. The courses had been run by health visitors in the UK who had basically taught them how to be parents, just the basics. And I remember one of the women saying to me, you're going to laugh at me, but I didn't know how to play with my kids. I'd never been shown it. Yeah. Another one said, I didn't know that feeding my kids, 2 packets of crisps for their lunch was affecting his behaviour. I didn't know that. I didn't know how to discipline him. And all of these women had blossomed. And the health visitors who'd run the course, they were just so nice. It was quite tough love that they'd given them. But all I kept thinking was, this 6-week course has potentially changed the lives of not just these women, but of their kids and of their kids. And that's kind of like changing the world in your own small little way. That's amazing. And that really lit me up inside. That was something that I wanted to do more of. And so I decided to make the move and work with people who were what I call the world shakers, this is this fabulous quote by Gandhi, who says, in your own gentle way, you can shake the world. And I love that. I think we're all capable of being world shakers. So for me, I help people who are doing those types of work. Now, when I say those, you don't have to be a health visitor. You could, but I work with people who are running their own businesses. I work with people who are working in the private sector and commercial, in big corporations. I work with people who are in the health service. all over, but people who are wanting to make a difference. Because if you're wanting to make a difference and you care, then you tend to be somebody who maybe takes on a bit too much, can get quite stressed, there can be a lot of pressure. So what I do is I help them to work happier, to take some of the pressure off themselves, get some smart strategies as to how they can keep themselves happy and healthy and well, and so they can continue doing this really great work.
I love that.
Thank you. So do I. So rewarding. You know, there are days where I just think, I can't believe I get to do this as a job. You know, it's lovely. It really is.
Oh, it's fantastic. So how has your business evolved since you first got started?
Well, I started off doing a lot of in-person stand-up training and one-to-one coaching, and that's still the main bulk of my business. I do a lot of work around helping people to boost their resilience. So I go into organisations, do a lot of work in healthcare, in councils and things like that, and local government, and help the people who are quite often on the front line to develop their resilience through a workshop. You know, I run workshops. I then also do workshops for to help leaders become more resilient, and I do one-to-one coaching as well. And then a couple of years ago, I started doing coach training because I trained as a coach about 11 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm one of the ancient grandparents of coaching. And so I've developed an accredited coaching program that we roll out in-house, and I'm going to be doing an open course that people can book on. And I'm soon going to start taking one-to-one private coaching clients, because that's not something that I've done for quite a while. So I'm quite excited about that as well.
Oh, that's excellent. So on your website, you talk about how you teach people how to build resilience in the face of stress. How do you define resilience, first of all?
Resilience to me, one of the metaphors I use is, I used to run. I wouldn't say be a runner, but I ran for a while. And I, like a lot of people, I was in my late 30s at the time, and I thought, well, I'm going to start running. How hard can it be? So I bought myself a pair of running shoes and set off, and didn't do a program, didn't do any training, and after a few weeks started developing injuries and things like that, and had to go to a podiatrist and a physiotherapist to get my Achilles injury that I'd developed fixed. So what they then said to me is, if you're going to take up running, you really need a program. You need to be building up your stamina. You need to be making sure that you're building up certain muscles so that you've got the strength there. And that to me is what resilience is. Yes, we can help people when they're really in the eye of the storm and they're really facing, just the real crises and stressful situations. That's when you would go to, say, a therapist or a counsellor or a psychotherapist. Mm-hmm. But what resilience does for you, it's almost like that, having the muscular strength and the right technique to make it less likely that you're going to get that injury, if I carry with my running analogy. That means you're less likely to, get the stress-related illness. You're less likely to hit the wall, as we sometimes call it. You're less likely to get the burnout because you've got those underlying skills and those practices in place. So resilience for me really is a practice that people can take up at any time.
Oh, I love that. I love that concept of practicing resilience. And I think that's something that people don't think of, because it's like we just kind of float along until all of a sudden we have a crisis, and then we're just, burnt out and stressed and we can't even deal with it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So a lot of the workshops and the work that you do with people is around teaching them these skills to kind of build up the resilience so that when they are faced with a crisis, they can deal with it more effectively.
Yes.
Excellent. There's another thing on your website that I really like that you say that says work can be tough, but stress is optional.
I think we have a bit of a misconception around stress. And some of it, yes, does come down to semantics. But I think what a lot of us think of as stress is actually just part of life. We need a certain amount of stress, and stress, as in the psychological definition of stress, is any amount of pressure, challenge and stimulation. Mm-hmm. And we need some pressure, challenge and stimulation. But what we don't need, and what's not good for us, is when we have the more typical view that we have of stress, as in the really unpleasant feelings, the heart palpitations, the sweaty palms, the not being able to sleep very well, the results of stress overwhelm. And that's the bit that I think is by and large optional for us. There is an awful lot that we can do. And one of the first things that I say to people is that while the stress, as in the kind of the pressures and the challenges aren't going to go away, it's also the results of that aren't going to go away unless you are actively doing something to deal with it. So it's about teaching people some smart stress management techniques so you don't get to that place where you're tearing your hair out at the end of the day, because we've all been there. Yeah.
I agree, and especially I think sometimes when we have our own business and it's all up to us because, you know, maybe we've come from a background where we've had people to kind of manage us and kind of help us with our career path, but it's like when you're in your own business, it's just all up to you. And if you're really not on top of things as far as kind of managing your responsibilities and stress and things, then it just can get out of control.
Absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, I run my own business, so I can so identify with what you're saying. Yeah.
There's another very interesting part on your website where you talk about how you were born into the pessimist camp, but that you've since changed to the optimist camp. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how you made that shift from being a pessimist to being an optimist? Because that's a huge, huge kind of attitude and mind shift.
I have to say it's a conscious thing. It is something that I still think my default position is pessimism, but I notice it and I pick it up really quickly. So without kind of getting too geeky about it, because I'm prone to get a bit geeky about it.
That's fine.
It's a lot of research. Originally, psychologists used to think that you were either born, you know, a glass half full person, an optimist, or a glass half empty person. And then that was it. It was pretty much set. Fortunately, they've since discovered that it's about 50% set. So yes, but babies, even when they're first born, some are more prone to be jumpier or to be crankier or to just get slightly more anxious. While some other, you know, I think they're the really lucky, blessed ones who get to be happy and smiley and just optimistic all of the time. Or the majority of the time. But the other 50% is stuff that we can work on. So there are, again, it comes down to the practices. There are lots of things that we can do to help to shift our mindset. So whilst if I'm under a really pressurized situation, my default position, automatic position may be to be that, oh my goodness, it's all going to go wrong. Because I'm conscious of that, I can quickly pick up on that and reframe what I'm thinking. And by that I mean, you know, if you had a phrase before, when we run our own businesses, it's all down to us. It can feel like it's all down to us. So it's quite easy to get into a mindset of thinking, oh my goodness, it's all on me. It's all down to me. One of the ways that I like to reframe that to myself when I'm doing a bit of a number on myself like that is to say, yay, this is all down to me. I can do whatever I want with this. So I can sit back and I can think, okay, what am I going to do here? And it can give me that sense of control. The other thing sometimes that it's also important to reframe is to say, do you know, it may all be down to me, but I'm not on my own in this.
Yeah.
And that's another really key part of resilience. And I know that's something you and I have talked about before. It's about how those connections that we make with other people, having those social connections, are really, really vital to resilience. Whether that's having the people you can call when you're having a bit of a bad day or a bit of a tearing your hair out day, or just the people that you can have a laugh with and smile with or geek out a bit with. And it's all about having those connections as well. Because sometimes we can get really stuck in our own heads and our own mindset, and somebody else just can have such a different perspective that can snap you out of it.
Yeah, I think that's so, so important. I mean, for me, business is all about connection, all kinds of connections. But it can be so helpful just to have kind of a business buddy or someone that you maybe have a Skype call with every month or so, or every couple of weeks, just to check in on and share your frustrations and your successes and everything. It can be really, really helpful just to have that extra kind of perspective.
Yeah, because it's really easy to start thinking, I'm the only one thinking like this, or, you know,
well, I'm the only one with this problem.
Yes, everyone else is so much better than I am, and, you know, we're all human and we're all perfectly imperfect, and none of us have all of the answers, but collectively, yes, we do, you know, so I'm all for the connection.
Another thing that I found very, very interesting on your website is you say that you have developed a rock-solid sense that whatever happens, it will be okay. And I love that. So how did you develop that sense, and how do you remind yourself of this on a regular basis?
Honestly, I think part of it is about getting older. I'm 42 now, and I think back when I was in my 20s, I had none of those experiences to look back on. I sometimes do feel really, really sorry for young people today, because I think the pressures are even more immense for them to get it right first time and not to mess up. Now, let me tell you, everybody, my whole 20s, the whole decade of my 20s felt like one huge screw up. You know, it wasn't. Oh no, I can look back on it with the wisdom of being slightly older, but it just felt like I messed up so many times. I tried different jobs, I tried different relationships, all kinds of different things. And there were quite a few crises that happened along the way, or things that felt like crises. One of the things about getting older is you can look back on those things and hopefully you've learned from them, and you kind of go, okay, well, I know I will never let that happen again. I will never get in that situation again. But the other thing, because one of the things as humans we find so difficult is the feeling of vulnerability of knowing that we can't control everything. We don't know if we're going to get sick tomorrow. We don't know if somebody that we love is, always going to be with us. We don't know. And that can be really, for business owners, we don't know sometimes where the next client's going to come from.
Yeah.
And that could be really scary. But for me, one of the things that I have learned to tell myself is that this too shall pass. So when it's in the really, really dark place, when I'm having a bit of a crisis, okay, I've been here before and I survived it, and it will be fine. And then also kind of drawing on that resilience and all the resources that I have, and what I know now is to say, even if I don't have the answer, somebody else will have the answer.
And that all goes back to the connections.
Absolutely. So I think it's about, and also I think saying to yourself, it's okay not to have the answer and not to have all of the, the solutions right now. That's okay. I don't have to be omnipotent. And there's a certain surrender in that I think there's a lot of grace and a lot of comfort that comes with it.
Yeah.
It takes a huge amount of pressure.
It does. Yeah, I remember back to my first business. I had no business experience whatsoever. I kind of found myself in the middle of this giant thing that just kept growing, and I had no experience. I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember this one time speaking to one of the guests at the hotels, and we're having dinner, and he was a business owner. He had a bar in the U.S. And I said to him, I have a question. Do you ever feel like, or do you always feel like you have no idea what you're doing? And he said, oh, yes, that's completely normal. That's part of running a business. It's okay. And I just thought, oh, thank God, because I never feel like I know what I'm doing. Like, I just felt like I was in a constant state of learning and struggle. And I felt so alone. It was because I wasn't reaching out to other people and saying, what can I do? Like, how does this work?
Yeah. And that pressure of trying to do it all yourself, I think is, we make it so much harder for ourselves than we need to.
Yes, I agree with that. So getting back onto your main business focus of how to work happier.
Yes.
What would you say are your top tips that people can use on how to work happier now?
Okay. I was thinking about this before on the call. I said, how do I dispense it into title? So the first thing I would say is prioritize self-care. Oh. For a lot of us, that feels really selfish. But it's essential. Think of it like, I don't know, brushing your teeth or going to the dentist, or it's self-maintenance. Because as I said earlier, those stresses, those pressures, those challenges don't go away. Even Oprah gets stressed. And so it's what you do to make sure that you're not carrying around all of those stress chemicals, the cortisol, the adrenaline, the noradrenaline, which can, really build up in your system, so that you're doing some things to disperse those. You're doing some things to look after yourself and make sure that you have some recharge time. Because I know that in the UK and the US, a lot of European countries, we have really, really long working hour cultures. Yes. Really long. We don't take vacations, and we, the idea of weekends now is you try and cram in everything that you didn't get done during the week. Yes. the idea of, sitting around with a book or just chilling out with some friends or doing something can seem a bit self-indulgent. So what I would say to people is go for it. Be self-indulgent. That is a good thing. You need that. I use this analogy that it's a bit like an elastic band. If you took a rubber band, it will stretch really far. But if you kept it taut, I'm doing this thing with my hands. But if you kept it taut, it would snap.
Yeah. But
that rubber band will last for years if you just let it go and let it relax, and then you can pull it out again, then you can let it relax. But a bit like that rubber band, as humans, if we stay at that stretched, taut point all the time, sooner or later it's going to snap. So self-care is about giving yourself that recovery time. Think of it as being like an athlete. Athletes train hard, but they also recuperate like champions. So that's one thing. The second thing is focus on what's going well. Now, this is one that people go, oh, but what about all the things that go wrong? I can't just leave it. No, I'm not saying ignore the things that go wrong, but the way that our brains are designed is they are designed to notice difference. They're really great energy-saving machines, our brains. And so if something is second nature to you, if you're good at it, if you're very competent at it, you get that feeling it's quite nice, but it doesn't take a lot of effort for you anymore. Yeah. When you're learning something new, you get that period where you kind of go, oh, I'm never going to learn this, and then you get used to it, but you still have to think about it. But then after a while, you're doing it, and you're barely having to think about it. You become competent at it. You don't have to think about it. Our brains dial down on that a little bit. We don't notice those nearly as much as the exceptions, which are the things that have gone wrong. Yes. So our brains are kind of predisposed to notice the things that are going wrong over all of the things that are going just fine and dandy. And whilst that can be useful, that can also get us into quite a negative mindset and can do quite a number on our self-confidence. So one of the things, it's a really simple technique that people can do, is at the end of the day, whether you want to do it at the end of your work day or you want to do it just before you go to bed when you're nice and relaxed, take a notebook. I recommend people get a nice little notebook that they'll enjoy using. Write down 5 things that have gone well today. Just 5 things. Now, for some people at first, they'll be going, what, 5? Really? 5? Because it's about retraining you to notice those things that are just no big deal to you. The things like, did you call to follow up with the client? If you find that easy, that will have just been no big deal. People normally shrug their shoulders when I say this to them. They go, I just do that every day. That's just part of my job. But they're the things that you're good at. They're the things that you bring to your role or to your business that are really making the difference. And if you can focus on those, then focus on, well, what are your strengths? You can start to see a pattern of the things that you're good at and what your strengths are. And if you can start playing to your strengths, life becomes so much easier. Work becomes so much easier. So if you're really good at talking to people, if you're a real extrovert and you've got the gift of the gab, but you're spending a lot of time on your computer, writing, chasing paperwork, things like that, see about if you can tweak it a little bit so that you can, I don't know, if you've got a business and you're writing blog posts, well, if you're really good at talking to people, why don't you interview somebody and use that instead of a blog post? You might find that becomes so much easier. And when people are playing to their strengths, that's the feeling that we get. It's, I just enjoyed it. That just wants, there's less struggle, there's less fight in there.
It's so much easier.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there will never be enough hours in the day to do everything that you have read on the internet that you should be doing for your business. Trust me, I've tried it.
And I think what's really, really important about this technique that you just mentioned is that it also trains your brain to focus on the things that are going well and the positive things, because it's just so easy to get caught up in what I've done wrong, what I need to improve, what we need to do, what's still left on the to-do list that we haven't checked off. But if we focus on the things that really went well and that we are good at, it completely retrains your mind.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that where the optimism thing comes in and the positive thinking. I'm not a massive fan of this just think positive and everything will be fine, because it's just not real life. But there is something about, if you can see more of the positive, friend of mine, a mentor of mine, uses the analogy that we can only take in a certain amount of information at any one time. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit like being in a darkened room and having a torch or a flashlight. Mm-hmm. And so the flashlight has a beam of light, and you can see what's in that beam of light, but everything else is obscured because it's in the dark. Mm-hmm. This is just making sure that your flashlight is taking in the things that have gone well, not ignoring the things that need your attention. You're taking in those things that have gone well, so you've got a much more balanced view. That can help you stay much more positive and optimistic frame of mind. Yes, it will then up your confidence and your happiness. And the thing is, the more confident and positive and happy you're feeling, the easier it's going to be to do all those other things. You know, if you're having a bad day, everything becomes a bit of a struggle, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. You know, if I'm in I've not slept very well, or I'm feeling a bit under the weather, and I'm maybe not as friendly as I would like to be to colleagues, or my brain doesn't work as well as it does because maybe I've then got frustrations and other things occupying it. It can take up a huge amount of energy, that kind of funky negative feeling. So if you can do some simple things like that to switch you into a more optimistic mindset, it becomes like this virtuous circle. Everything becomes that little bit easier.
And I think that's important what you said about it being a virtuous circle, because on the bad days it seems to feel like things just spiral downwards into a black hole of just awfulness. But if we can kind of reverse that and make that kind of spiraling upwards into something so much more positive and uplifting, that completely changes everything.
Absolutely. Have I got time for one more?
Yes, please.
So the other one that I would say, and this is so key, this was a real kind of light bulb moment for me when I first realised this, is decide what you want out of a situation. Because I would spend so much time feeling almost like the victim of circumstances. I would open my email and, oh my goodness, there's an email from a client and they're not very happy, or what am I going to do? And I would kind of go into this spiral thing. So I was waiting for some disaster to happen. Or if I had to go and speak to my boss, I'd be second guessing what was going to happen and and there was lots of stress that came up with that for me. And the real difference was deciding, what do I want to have happen? And then what can I do to influence the situation? And this can be, about going after things proactively, like I want to start developing products, or how do I get more sales in? Or it can also be when the things haven't gone so right, you've got the bit of a situation that needs dealing with. It gives you that opportunity to take a deep breath and not just react, and choose your response. And for me, that is just so key, because if I just go into automatic reaction mode, then I'm maybe not going to be as centred and articulate and nice as I might just fly off the handle and just go, that's not going to get a great reaction out of the person I'm talking to. I'm then going to feel horrible about myself. It's about giving yourself permission to take that deep breath and choose your response. And that can apply to, whether you're a bit too good at saying yes to things, or whether you're dealing with a crisis, or whether it's, what do I want to do next? It's taking that deep breath and saying, what do I want to do? How do I want to respond? How can I influence this situation? So it's put yourself at the centre of control, and looking at what you can control and what you can influence, rather than being at the victim of circumstance.
Oh, I think that's so important. And what you say about being the victim of circumstance, I think so many people have trouble saying no to kind of the low priority things.
Yeah.
And that can really, really contribute to just not being happy with your business or your job.
Absolutely. There was a great technique that I can't remember who shared it with me. It's pretty hardcore, but they said basically, write down your top 5 goals for your life. And then anything else that does not kind of go towards those goals, stop doing them. So if your goal may be, I don't know, to have a 6-figure business, or to have a family, or why are you then saying that you'll go and speak at this tiny conference that isn't really your target audience? And why do we do these things? Why am I spending 7 hours trying to teach myself how to fix something on my website, where I could pay somebody £30 an hour, probably not even that, fix it for me? It's about really making sure that your actions are aligned with what you're wanting.
I think that's so, so important. And I think so many people just lose track of that focus.
Oh, it's so easy done. I do it.
Yeah, we all do it.
And by the way, I'm not saying I have all of this figured out. It's work in progress. But one thing about me is I think I made so many of these mistakes. I still do. You know, we're all perfectly imperfect. I made so many mistakes that if I can save people a bit of the time and the angst that I went through, my job's done.
Yeah, it's excellent. So how can other women in business benefit from working with you?
Well, for people, if they are not enjoying working in their business, you know, I think there's so many people go off on this, you know, what very much for so many people is almost like a vocation. They want to shake the world in their own little way. They want to be putting this lovely creation out into the world that is their business, and then they can feel that they're overwhelmed or that they're just not enjoying it anymore because it becomes a job after a while. And you know, everything does to a certain extent. What I do is I can help them to find that happiness, that joy, that focus, and that passion again. And so it's about, you know, working to their strengths. It's about making sure that they're doing the important things. It's also about making sure they're doing the things that are really aligned with their values as well. I think there's a lot of marketing bump out there that we should be a certain way. And actually, I'm all for people being really authentic and do things that are really aligned with their values. If you're doing something that's not aligned with your values, then that becomes very internally distressing for us.
Yes. And I think one of the greatest benefits of having your own business is that you can really build your business around your own values.
Absolutely. And I think certainly when you're starting out, there seems to be so many different options out there and so many gurus who are telling you, you know, oh, buy Google AdWords or, you know, do this or do the other. That it can almost, you can lose almost that connection with your own, I was going to say moral compass, not really moral compass, but that sense of, does this feel authentic and right for me? And people would wonder, is that just because this is new, it feels unfamiliar, or is this because it's just not sitting right with me? So that's a big thing that I work with people on.
I think that's really, really important to just focus on that kind of internal compass and allow that to guide you.
Yeah.
So, Jo, do you have any women business mentors? Are there any women in business who inspire you?
Yes, I am mentored and coached by Kate Swoboda, who is Kate Courageous.
Yep. And
she's just awesome. She was one of those people who, for me, was a real kind of beacon of somebody who's doing things very authentically. It was all about, you know, do what feels right in terms of marketing. So have integrity with it. And that was just such a breath of fresh air, because I'd literally spent 12 months paying out for courses and listening to people who were talking about, oh, use this type of language so you can, you know, manipulate people into buying a bit more or to close the sale and things like that. And Kate was fantastic. She's also got a super smart brain when it comes to strategy and doing things online. So she's been absolutely fantastic for me. Danielle Laporte, I love her. I love her. Again, somebody who's very authentic, ploughing her own path, and is saying, you know, don't follow me, follow your own path. This is, listen to that inner voice inside you. Try to think who else. Tara Gentili, she has a great, really strategic way of looking at things. I'm trying to think. There obviously are more, but they're the three main ones. In terms of, I think, just not so much business, but just life in general, Brene is just a goddess. I just adore her. And if anyone hasn't checked out her TED Talk on vulnerability, then they just should. It's just amazing.
Okay, I'll make a note of that for the show notes. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Jo, where can people find you online?
They can go to jocasey.com. That's Jo without an E, so JOCASEY.com. And I also have a Facebook page, which is /Jo Casey. And on Twitter, I'm Jo Casey B. Well, I can send you all the links. You can put in the show notes if you want.
Yes, I will.
Come over and say hi. I spend way too much time than is probably good for me on Facebook, Twitter, and now Pinterest, which I swear is like crack.
I know, it is. It's lovely.
Oh my goodness, an hour has gone by. What's happened? I've just been looking at pictures of lovely food. So please come over and say hi. I have a free 3-part video series that people can sign up for on my site, which is called the Work Happier Now video course. And it's 3 days. And what I do is I share really quick to implement tips for people about how they can boost their resilience. And I really wanted things that people could kind of take away and use straight away. So that's why they're really quick. They don't take less than 5 minutes a day. In fact, most of them take less time to do than that. So that's available on my site. And that's about me. But yeah, I'm all about the connection. So please come find me and connect and come say hi. I'd love that.
Excellent. And to the listeners, I wanted to say that Jo is one of those rare people who really, really lets her personality shine through on her website. When I first saw Jo's website, I started going through her about page. She has kind of a more formal version and then an informal version and then the 42 things about me. And I just got such a great connection from her from just reading her website. And this is something that I'm constantly talking to people about, really, really getting clear on who they are and expressing that online, because that is how you will make the connections with people. Or not. But that's kind of a great, great filtering point. And I was just writing the other day about, let your colors shine through and don't be beige. And I think Jo is an excellent example of this. So please do check out our website because she really does a good job with this.
I have to say that took a while for me to get to the point where I could be courageous enough to do that. And that was something about working with Kate Courageous that helped me to do that. But once I did that, that's when things really started to take off for me. So trying to play it safe actually was just keeping me kind of stuck.
It is, because I think a lot of people just kind of water themselves down and think, oh, well, I'll just, make this, appealing to everyone. But it's not.
No. And yeah, if people don't like me, then,
they're not your ideal client.
They're not my ideal client. They would probably hate working with me and I probably wouldn't be able to help them. So, it's a win-win.
All right, Jo. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
I've so enjoyed it. Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit sociallyholistic.com/SHP21 for the show notes on this episode.
Thanks so much for listening to the Socially Holistic Podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. Please help us help more women in business by giving us a 5-star review of this podcast. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more successful businesses there will be. So please leave a 5-star review today over at iTunes. Thank you.